On June 25, 2009, American singer Michael Jackson died of acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication at his home on North Carolwood Drive in the Holmby Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles, California. His physician, Conrad Murray, said that he found Jackson in his room not breathing and with a weak pulse. He administered cardiopulmonary resuscitation to no avail, and security called 9-1-1 at 12:21 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Paramedics treated Jackson at the scene, but he was pronounced dead at the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. On August 28, 2009, the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner coroner concluded that Jackson's death was a homicide. Jackson had been administered propofol and anti-anxiety benzodiazepines lorazepam and midazolam by his doctor. Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in November 2011, and was released in 2013 after serving 2 years of his 4-year prison sentence with time off for good behavior. At the time of his death, Jackson had been preparing for a series of comeback concerts, This Is It, due to begin in July 2009 in London. His death triggered reactions around the world, creating unprecedented surges of internet traffic and a spike in sales of his music. A televised memorial service, held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, was viewed by an estimated 2.5 billion people globally. In 2010, Sony Music Entertainment signed a $250 million deal with Jackson's estate to retain distribution rights to his recordings up until 2017 and to release 7 posthumous albums over the following decade. Life and career. Early life and the Jackson 5. Michael Joseph Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana, on August 29, 1958. He was the 8th of 10 children in the Jackson family, a working-class African-American family living in a 2-bedroom house on Jackson Street. His mother, Catherine Esther Jackson, played clarinet and piano, had aspired to be a country and western performer, and worked part-time at Sears. She was a Jehovah's Witness. His father, Joseph Walter Joe Jackson, a former boxer, was a crane operator at U.S. Steel and played guitar with a local rhythm and blues band, the Falcons, to supplement the family's income. Joe's great-grandfather, July Jack Gale, was a U.S. Army Scout. Family lore held that he was also a Native American medicine man. Michael grew up with 3 sisters and 5 brothers. A 6th brother, Marlon's twin Brandon, died shortly after birth. In 1964, Michael and Marlon joined the Jackson Brothers, a band formed by their father which included Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine as backup musicians playing congas and tambourine. Michael said his father told him he had a fat nose, and physically and emotionally abused him during rehearsals. He recalled that Joe often sat in a chair with a belt in his hand as he and his siblings rehearsed, ready to punish any mistakes. Joe acknowledged that he regularly whipped Michael. Catherine said that although whipping came to be considered abuse, it was a common way to discipline children when Michael was growing up. Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Marlon denied that their father was abusive and said that the whippings, which were harder on Michael because he was younger, kept them disciplined and out of trouble. Michael said his youth was lonely and isolated. Later in 1964, Michael began sharing lead vocals with Jermaine, and the group's name was changed to the Jackson 5. In 1965, the group won a talent show. Michael performed the dance to Robert Parker's 1965 song Barefootin' and sang The Temptations' My Girl. From 1966 to 1968, the Jacksons 5 toured the Midwest. They frequently played at a string of black clubs known as the Chitlin Circuit as the opening act for artists such as Sam and Dave, the O'Jays, Gladys Knight, and Etta James. The Jackson 5 also performed at clubs and cocktail lounges, where striptease shows were featured, and at local auditoriums and high school dances. In August 1967, while touring the East Coast, they won a weekly amateur night concert at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. The Jackson 5 recorded several songs for a Gary record label, Steel Town Records. Their first single, Big Boy, was released in 1968. Bobby Taylor of Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers brought the Jackson 5 to Motown after they opened for Taylor at Chicago's Regal Theater in 1968. Taylor produced some of their early Motown recordings, including a version of Who's Lovin' You. After signing with Motown, the Jackson family relocated to Los Angeles. In 1969, Motown executives decided Diana Ross should introduce the Jackson 5 to the public, partly to bolster her career in television, sending off what was considered Motown's last product of its production line. The Jackson 5 made their first television appearance in 1969 in the Miss Black America pageant, performing a cover of It's Your Thing. Rolling Stone later described the young Michael as a prodigy with overwhelming musical gifts who quickly emerged as the main draw and lead singer. In January 1970, I Want You Back became the first Jackson 5 song to reach number 1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100. It stayed there for 4 weeks. 3 more singles with Motown topped the chart: ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There. In May 1971, the Jackson family moved into a large house at Havenhurst, a 2-acre estate in Encino, California. During this period, Michael developed from a child performer into a teen idol. Between 1972 and 1975, he released 4 solo studio albums with Motown: Got to Be There, Ben, Music and Me, and Forever, Michael. Got to Be There and Ben, the title tracks from his first 2 solo albums, sold well as singles, as did a cover of Bobby Day's Rockin' Robin. Michael maintained ties to the Jackson 5. The Jackson 5 were later described as a cutting-edge example of black crossover artists. They were frustrated by Motown's refusal to allow them creative input. Jackson's performance of their top 5 single Dancing Machine on Soul Train popularized the robot dance. Move to Epic and I Off the Wall / I. None. I Thriller / I and I Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, Forever / I. None. Pepsi Incident and Other Commercial Activities. In November 1983, Jackson and his brothers partnered with PepsiCo in a $5 million promotional deal that broke records for a celebrity endorsement. The first Pepsi campaign, which ran in the U.S. from 1983 to 1984 and launched its New Generation theme, included tour sponsorship, public relations events, and in-store displays. Jackson helped to create the advertisement, and suggested using his song Billie Jean, with revised lyrics, as its jingle. On January 27, 1984, Michael and other members of the Jacksons filmed a Pepsi commercial overseen by Phil Dusenberry, a BBDO ad agency executive, and Alan Potash, Pepsi's worldwide creative director, at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. During a simulated concert before a full house of fans, pyrotechnics accidentally set Jackson's hair on fire, causing second-degree burns to his scalp. Jackson underwent treatment to hide the scars and had his 3rd rhinoplasty shortly thereafter. Pepsi settled out of court, and Jackson donated the $1.5 million settlement to the Brotman Medical Center in Culver City, California. Its now closed Michael Jackson Burn Center was named in his honor. Jackson signed a second agreement with Pepsi in the late 1980s for $10 million. The second campaign covered 20 countries and provided financial support for Jackson's Bad album and 1987-88 World Tour. Jackson had endorsements and advertising deals with other companies, such as LA Gear, Suzuki, and Sony, but none were as significant as his deals with Pepsi. The Victory Tour of 1984 headlined the Jacksons and showcased Jackson's new solo material to more than 2 million Americans. It was the last tour he did with his brothers. Following controversy over the concert's ticket sales, Jackson donated his share of the proceeds, an estimated $3 to $5 million, to charity. During the last concert of the Victory Tour at the Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, Jackson announced his split from the Jacksons during Shake Your Body. His charitable work continued with the release of We Are the World, co-written with Lionel Richie, which raised money for the poor in the US and Africa. It earned $63 million, and became one of the best-selling singles of all time, with 20 million copies sold. It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1985, including Song of the Year for Jackson and Richie as its writers. The project's creators received 2 Special American Music Awards honors, one for the creation of the song and another for the USA for Africa idea. Jackson, Jones, and promoter Ken Cragen received special awards for their roles in the song's creation. Jackson collaborated with Paul McCartney in the early 1980s, and learned that McCartney was making $40 million a year from owning the rights to other artists' songs. By 1983, Jackson had begun buying publishing rights to others' songs, but he was careful with his acquisitions, only bidding on a few of the dozens that were offered to him. Jackson's early acquisitions of music catalogs and song copyrights such as the Sly Stone collection included Everyday People, Len Barry's 1 2 3, and Dion DeMucky's The Wanderer and Runaround Sue. In 1984, Robert Holmes Accord announced he was selling the ATV Music publishing catalog comprising the publishing rights to nearly 4,000 songs, including most of the Beatles' material. In 1981, McCartney had been offered the catalog for £20 million. Jackson submitted a bid of $46 million on November 20, 1984. When Jackson and McCartney were unable to make a joint purchase, McCartney did not want to be the sole owner of the Beatles' songs, and did not pursue an offer on his own. Jackson's agents were unable to come to a deal, and in May 1985 left talks after having spent more than $1 million and 4 months of due diligence work on the negotiations. In June 1985, Jackson and Branca learned that Charles Koppelmans and Marty Bandiers, the entertainment company, had made a tentative offer to buy ATV Music for $50 million. In early August, Holmes Accord contacted Jackson and talks resumed. Jackson's increased bid of $47.5 million was accepted because he could close the deal more quickly, having already completed due diligence. Jackson agreed to visit Holmes Accord in Australia, where he would appear on the Channel 7 Perth telethon. His purchase of ATV Music was finalized on August 10, 1985. Increased tabloid speculation. Jackson's skin had been medium brown during his youth, but from the mid-1980s gradually grew paler. The change drew widespread media coverage, including speculation that he had been bleaching his skin. His dermatologist, Arnold Klein, said he observed in 1983 that Jackson had vitiligo, a condition characterized by patches of the skin losing their pigment, and sensitivity to sunlight. He also identified discoid lupus erythematosus in Jackson. He diagnosed Jackson with lupus that year, and with vitiligo in 1986. Vitiligo's drastic effects on the body can cause psychological distress. Jackson used fair-colored makeup, and possibly skin-bleaching prescription creams, to cover up the uneven blotches of color caused by the illness. The creams would have further lightened his skin, and, with the application of makeup, he could appear very pale. Jackson said he had not purposely bleached his skin and could not control his vitiligo, adding, "When people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me." He became friends with Klein and Klein's assistant, Debbie Rowe. Rowe later became Jackson's second wife and the mother of his first 2 children. In his 1988 autobiography and a 1993 interview, Jackson said he had had 2 rhinoplasty surgeries and a cleft chin surgery, but no more than that. He said he lost weight in the early 1980s because of a change in diet to achieve a dancer's body. Witnesses reported that he was often dizzy, and speculated he was suffering from anorexia nervosa. Periods of weight loss became a recurring problem later in his life. After his death, Jackson's mother said that he first turned to cosmetic procedures to remedy his vitiligo, because he did not want to look like a spotted cow. She said he had received more than the 2 cosmetic surgeries he claimed and speculated that he had become addicted to them. In 1986, tabloids reported that Jackson slept in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber to slow aging, and pictured him lying in a glass box. The claim was untrue, and tabloids reported that he spread the story himself. They also reported that Jackson took female hormone shots to keep his voice high and facial hair wispy, proposed to Elizabeth Taylor and possibly had a shrine of her, and had cosmetic surgery on his eyes. Jackson's manager Frank DiLeo denied all of them, except for Jackson having a chamber. DiLeo added, "I don't know if he sleeps in it. I'm not for it. But Michael thinks it's something that's probably healthy for him. He's a bit of a health fanatic." When Jackson took his pet chimpanzee Bubbles to tour in Japan, the media portrayed Jackson as an aspiring Disney cartoon character who befriended animals. It was also reported that Jackson had offered to buy the bones of Joseph Merrick. In June 1987, the Chicago Tribune reported Jackson's publicist bidding $1 million for the skeleton to the London Hospital Medical College on his behalf. The college maintained the skeleton was not for sale. DiLeo said Jackson had an absorbing interest in Merrick, purely based on his awareness of the ethical, medical, and historical significance. These tabloid stories inspired the name Wacko Jacko, which Jackson came to despise. According to music journalist Joseph Vogel, the demeaning name first appeared in British tabloid The Sun in 1985. The name's origins come from Jacko Macaco, the name of a famous monkey used in monkey baiting matches at the Westminster Pit in the early 1820s. Jacko was used in Cockney slang to refer to monkeys in general, hence a racist connotation behind the name. Jackson worked with George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola on the 17-minute $30 million 3D film Captain EO, which ran from 1986 at Disneyland and Epcot, and later at Tokyo Disneyland and Euro Disneyland. After having been removed in the late 1990s, it returned to the theme park for several years after Jackson's death. In 1987, Jackson disassociated himself from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Katherine Jackson said this might have been because some witnesses strongly opposed the Thriller video. Michael had denounced it in a witness publication in 1984. I Bad/I, Autobiography, and Neverland. None. I Dangerous/I and Public Social Work. None. First child sexual abuse accusations and first marriage. In August 1993, Jackson was accused of child sexual abuse by a 13-year-old boy, Jordan Chandler, and his father, Evan Chandler. Jordan said he and Jackson had engaged in acts of kissing, masturbation and oral sex. While Jordan's mother initially told police that she did not believe Jackson had molested him, her position wavered a few days later. Evan was recorded discussing his intention to pursue charges, which Jackson used to argue that he was the victim of a jealous father trying to extort money. Jackson's older sister LaToya accused him of being a pedophile. She later retracted this, saying she had been forced into it by her abusive husband. Police raided Jackson's home in August and found 2 legal large-format art books featuring young boys playing, running, and swimming in various states of undress. Jackson denied knowing of the book's content and claimed if they were there someone had to send them to him and he did not open them. Jordan Chandler gave police a description of Jackson's genitals. A strip search was made, and the jurors felt the description was not a match. In January 1994, Jackson settled with the Chandlers out of court for a reported total sum of $23 million. The police never pressed criminal charges. Citing a lack of evidence without Jordan's testimony, the state closed its investigation on September 22, 1994. Jackson had been taking painkillers for his reconstructive scalp surgeries, administered due to the Pepsi commercial accident in 1984, and became dependent on them to cope with the stress of the sexual abuse allegations. On November 12, 1993, Jackson cancelled the remainder of the Dangerous tour due to health problems, stress from the allegations and painkiller addiction. He thanked close friend Elizabeth Taylor for support, encouragement, and counsel. The end of the tour concluded his relationship with Pepsi Cola, which sponsored the tour. In late 1993, Jackson proposed to Lisa Marie Presley, daughter of Elvis Presley, over the phone. They married in La Vega, Dominican Republic, in May 1994 by civil judge Hugo Francisco Alvarez Perez. The tabloid media speculated that the wedding was a publicity stunt to deflect away from Jackson's sexual abuse allegations and jumpstart Presley's career as a singer. Their marriage ended little more than a year later, and they separated in December 1995. Presley cited irreconcilable differences when filing for divorce the next month and only sought to reclaim her maiden name as her settlement. After the divorce, Judge Perez said, "They lasted longer than I thought they would. I gave them a year. They lasted a year and a half." In an October 2010 interview with talk show host Oprah Winfrey, Presley revealed that she and Jackson had attempted to reconcile intermittently for 4 years following their divorce, and that she had traveled to different parts of the world in order to be with him. Jackson was set to compose music for the Sega Genesis video game Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but left the project around the time the sexual abuse allegations surfaced and went uncredited. Jackson was a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and had collaborated with Sega for the 1990 arcade game Moonwalker. The reasons for Jackson's departure and whether his compositions remain in the released game have been the subject of debate. Sega Technical Institute director Roger Hector and Sonic the Hedgehog CEO creator Naoto Oshima said that Jackson's involvement was terminated and his music reworked following the allegations. However, Jackson's musical director Brad Buxer and 2 other members of Jackson's team, Doug Grigsby III and Sirocco Jones, said the music remained and that Jackson went uncredited because he was unhappy with how the Genesis replicated his music. Sonic 3 producer Yuji Naka later confirmed in 2022 that Jackson had composed some of the songs in the game and that the development team had visited his home, while expressing disappointment that his songs were replaced in the compilation game Sonic Origins allegedly due to a royalty dispute with Jackson's estate. I, second marriage, and fatherhood. None. Label dispute and I Invincible I. None. Second child abuse allegations and acquittal. Beginning in May 2002, a documentary film crew led by Martin Bashir followed Jackson for several months. The documentary, broadcast in February 2003 as Living with Michael Jackson, showed Jackson holding hands and discussing sleeping arrangements with a 12-year-old boy. He said that he saw nothing wrong with having sleepovers with minors and sharing his bed and bedroom with various people, which aroused controversy. He insisted that the sleepovers were not sexual and that his words had been misunderstood. In October 2003, Jackson received the key to the city of Las Vegas from Mayor Oscar Goodman. On November 18, 2003, Sony released Number Ones, a greatest hits compilation. It was certified 5 times platinum by the RIAA, and 9 times platinum in the UK, for shipments of at least 2.7 million units. On December 18, 2003, Santa Barbara authorities charged Jackson with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of intoxicating a minor with alcoholic drinks. Jackson denied the allegations and pleaded not guilty. The People v. Jackson trial began on January 31, 2005, in Santa Maria, California, and lasted until the end of May. Jackson found the experience stressful and it affected his health. If convicted, he would have faced up to 20 years in prison. On June 13, 2005, Jackson was acquitted on all counts. After the trial, he became reclusive and moved to Bahrain as a guest of Sheikh Abdullah. In December 2009, the Federal Bureau of Investigation released files on Michael Jackson. These files revealed the Bureau's role in the 2005 trial and the 1993 allegations against Jackson, among other revelations. The FBI found no evidence of criminal conduct on Jackson's behalf. Final years and this is it/I. None. Death. On June 25, 2009, less than 3 weeks before the first This Is It show was due to begin in London, with all concerts sold out, Jackson died from cardiac arrest, caused by a propofol and benzodiazepine overdose. Conrad Murray, his personal physician, had given Jackson various medications to help him sleep at his rented mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. Paramedics received a 911 call at 12:22 p.m. Pacific Time and arrived 3 minutes later. Jackson was not breathing and CPR was performed. Resuscitation efforts continued en route to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, and for more than an hour after Jackson's arrival there, but were unsuccessful, and Jackson was pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. Pacific Time. Jackson was administered propofol, lorazepam, and midazolam. His death was caused by a propofol overdose. News of his death spread quickly online, causing websites to slow down and crash from user overload, and putting unprecedented strain on services and websites including Google, AOL Instant Messenger, Twitter, and Wikipedia. Overall, web traffic rose by between 11% and 20%. MTV and BET aired marathons of Jackson's music videos, and Jackson specials aired on television stations around the world. MTV briefly returned to its original music video format, and aired hours of Jackson's music videos, with live news specials featuring reactions from MTV personalities and other celebrities. Memorial Service. Jackson's memorial was held on July 7, 2009, at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, preceded by a private family service at Forest Lawn Memorial Park's Hall of Liberty. Over 1.6 million fans applied for tickets to the memorial. The 8,750 recipients were drawn at random, and each received 2 tickets. The memorial service was one of the most watched events in streaming history, with an estimated U.S. audience of 31.1 million and a worldwide audience of an estimated 2.5 to 3 billion. Mariah Carey, Stevie Wonder, Lionel Richie, Jennifer Hudson, and Shaheen Jaffargola performed at the memorial, and Smokey Robinson and Queen Latifah gave eulogies. Al Sharpton received a standing ovation with cheers when he told Jackson's children, "Wasn't nothing strange about your daddy. It was strange what your daddy had to deal with. But he dealt with it anyway." Jackson's 11-year-old daughter Paris Catherine, speaking publicly for the first time, wept as she addressed the crowd. The Reverend Lucius Smith provided a closing prayer. Jackson's body was entombed on September 3, 2009, at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Criminal investigation and prosecution of Conrad Murray. In August 2009, the Los Angeles County coroner ruled that Jackson's death was a homicide. Law enforcement officials charged Murray with involuntary manslaughter on February 8, 2010. In late 2011, he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and held without bail to await sentencing. Murray was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Posthumous sales. At the 2009 American Music Awards, Jackson won 4 posthumous awards, including 2 for his compilation album No. 1s, bringing his total American Music Awards to 26. In the year after his death, more than 16.1 million of Jackson's albums sold in the US and 35 million albums sold worldwide, more than any other artist in 2009. He became the first artist to sell 1 million music downloads in a week, with 2.6 million song downloads. Thriller, Number Ones, and The Essential Michael Jackson became the first catalog albums to outsell any new album. Jackson also became the first artist to have 4 of the top 20 best-selling albums in a single year in the US. Following the surge in sales, in March 2010, Sony Music signed a $250 million deal with the Jackson estate to extend their distribution rights to Jackson's back catalog until at least 2017. It had been due to expire in 2015. It was the most expensive music contract for a single artist in history. They agreed to release 10 albums of previously unreleased material and new collections of released work. The deal was extended in 2017. That July, a Los Angeles court awarded Quincy Jones $9.4 million of disputed royalty payments for Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. In July 2018, Sony/ATV bought the estate's stake in EMI for $287.50 million. In 2014, Jackson became the first artist to have a top 10 single in the Billboard Hot 100 in 5 different decades. The following year, Thriller became the first album to be certified for 30 million shipments by the RIAA. A year later, it was certified 33 times platinum, after SoundScan added streams and audio downloads to album certifications. Posthumous releases and productions. The first posthumous Jackson song, This Is It, written in the 1980s with Paul Anka, was released in October 2009. The surviving Jackson brothers reunited to record backing vocals. It was followed by a documentary film about the rehearsals for the cancelled This Is It tour, Michael Jackson's This Is It, and a compilation album. Despite a limited 2-week engagement, the film became the highest-grossing documentary or concert film ever, with earnings of more than $260 million worldwide. Jackson's estate received 90% of the profits. In late 2010, Sony released the first posthumous album, Michael, and the promotional single Breaking News. Jackson collaborator Will.i.am expressed disgust, saying that Jackson would not have approved the release. Video game developer Ubisoft released a music video game featuring Jackson for the 2010 holiday season, Michael Jackson, The Experience. It was among the first games to use Kinect and PlayStation Move, the motion-detecting camera systems for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. In April 2011, Mohammed Al Fayed, chairman of Fulham Football Club, unveiled a statue of Jackson outside the club stadium. Craven Cottage. It was moved to the National Football Museum in Manchester in May 2014, and removed from display in March 2019 following renewed sexual assault allegations. In October 2011, the theatre company Cirque du Soleil launched Michael Jackson, The Immortal World Tour, a $57 million production, in Montreal, with a permanent show resident in Las Vegas. A larger and more theatrical Cirque show, Michael Jackson, 1, designed for residency at the Mandalay Bay Resort in Las Vegas, opened on May 23, 2013, in a renovated theater. In 2012, in an attempt to end a family dispute, Jackson's brother Jermaine retracted his signature on a public letter criticizing executors of Jackson's estate and his mother's advisors over the legitimacy of his brother's will. T.J. Jackson, son of Tito Jackson, was given co guardianship of Michael Jackson's children after false reports of Catherine Jackson going missing. Scape, an album of unreleased material, was released on May 13, 2014. A duet between Jackson and Justin Timberlake titled Love Never Felt So Good was released in 2014, making Jackson the first artist to have a top 10 single on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 in 5 different decades when the single reached number 9. Later that year, Queen released a duet recorded with Jackson and Freddie Mercury in the 1980s. A compilation album, Scream, was released on September 29, 2017. In November 2019, it was reported that a Jackson biopic, produced by Bohemian Rhapsody producer Graham King, was in the works, with the screenplay written by John Logan. Jackson's estate granted King the rights to his music and will work with King. A jukebox musical, MJ the Musical, premiered on Broadway in 2022. Actor Miles Frost won the 2022 Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical for his portrayal of Jackson. Posthumous child sexual abuse allegations. In 2013, choreographer Wade Robson filed a lawsuit alleging that Jackson had sexually abused him for 7 years, beginning when he was 7 years old. In 2014, a case was filed by James Safechuck, alleging sexual abuse over a 4-year period from the age of 10. Both had testified in Jackson's defense during the 1993 allegations. Robson did so again in 2005. In 2015, Robson's case against Jackson's estate was dismissed on the grounds of being filed too late. Safechuck's claim was also time-barred. In 2017, it was ruled that Jackson's corporations could not be held accountable for his alleged past actions. The rulings were appealed, and on October 20, 2020, Safechuck's lawsuit against Jackson's corporations was again dismissed, with the presiding judge ruling that there was no evidence that Safechuck had a relationship with Jackson's companies. On April 26, 2021, Robson's case was dismissed because of a lack of supporting evidence that the defendants exercised control over Jackson. Robson and Safechuck described allegations in graphic detail in the documentary Leaving Neverland, released in March 2019. Radio stations in New Zealand, Canada, the UK, and the Netherlands removed Jackson's music from their playlists. Jackson's family condemned the film as a public lynching, and the Jackson estate released a statement calling the film a tabloid character assassination endured in life, and now in death. Close associates of Jackson, such as Corey Feldman, Aaron Carter, Brett Barnes, and Macaulay Culkin, said that Jackson had not molested them. Rebuttal documentaries, such as Square One, Michael Jackson, Neverland Firsthand, investigating the Michael Jackson documentary, and Michael Jackson, Chase the Truth, presented information countering the claims suggested by Leaving Neverland. Jackson's album sales increased following the documentary screenings. Billboard senior editor Gail Mitchell said she and a colleague interviewed about 30 music executives who believed Jackson's legacy could withstand the controversy. In late 2019, some New Zealand and Canadian radio stations re-added Jackson's music to their playlists, citing positive listener survey results. On February 21, 2019, the Jackson estate sued HBO for breaching a non-disparagement clause from a 1992 contract. The suit sought to compel HBO to participate in a non-confidential arbitration that could result in $100 million or more in damages rewarded to the estate. HBO said they did not breach a contract and filed an anti-SLAPP motion against the estate. In September 2019, Judge George H. Wu denied HBO's motion to dismiss the case, allowing the Jackson estate to arbitrate. HBO appealed, but in December 2020 the appeals court affirmed Wu's ruling. Legacy. Jackson has been referred to as the king of pop for having transformed the art of music videos and paving the way for modern pop music. For much of Jackson's career, he had an unparalleled worldwide influence over the younger generation. His influence extended beyond the music industry. He impacted dance, led fashion trends, and raised awareness for global affairs. Jackson's music and videos fostered racial diversity in MTV's roster and steered its focus from rock to pop music and R&B, shaping the channel into a form that proved enduring. In songs such as Man in the Mirror, Black or White, Heal the World, Earth Song and They Don't Care About Us, Jackson's music emphasized racial integration and environmentalism and protested injustice. He is recognized as the most successful entertainer of all time by Guinness World Records. He is considered one of the most significant cultural icons of the 20th century, and his contributions to music, dance, and fashion, along with his publicized personal life, made him a global figure in popular culture for over 4 decades. Trying to trace Michael Jackson's influence on the pop stars that followed him is like trying to trace the influence of oxygen and gravity. So vast, far-reaching, and was his impact particularly in the wake of Thriller's colossal and heretofore unmatched commercial success that there weren't a whole lot of artists who weren't trying to mimic some of the Jackson formula. Danielle Smith, Chief Content Officer of Vibe Media Group and the Editor-in-Chief of Vibe, described Jackson as the greatest star. Steve Huey of AllMusic called him an unstoppable juggernaut, possessed of all the skills to dominate the charts seemingly at will, an instantly identifiable voice, eye-popping dance moves, stunning musical versatility and loads of sheer star power. Bet said Jackson was quite simply the greatest entertainer of all time whose sound, style, movement and legacy continues to inspire artists of all genres. In 1984, Time pop critic Jay Cox wrote that Jackson is the biggest thing since the Beatles. He is the hottest single phenomenon since Elvis Presley. He just may be the most popular black singer ever. He described Jackson as a star of records, radio, rock video. A one-man rescue team for the music business. A songwriter who sets the beat for a decade. A dancer with the fanciest feet on the street. A singer who cuts across all boundaries of taste and style, and color too. In 2003, the Daily Telegraph writer Tom Utley described Jackson as extremely important and a genius. At Jackson's memorial service on July 7, 2009, Motown founder Berry Gordy called Jackson the greatest entertainer that ever lived. In a June 28, 2009 Baltimore Sun article, Jill Rosen wrote that Jackson's legacy influenced fields including sound, dance, fashion, music videos and celebrity. Pop critic Robert Christgau wrote that Jackson's work from the 1970s to the early 1990s showed immense originality, adaptability, and ambition with genius beats, hooks, arrangements, and vocals, music that will stand forever as a reproach to the puritanical notion that pop music is slick or shallow and that's the end of it. During the 1990s, as Jackson lost control of his troubling life, his music suffered and began to shape an arc not merely of promise fulfilled and outlived, but of something approaching tragedy. A phenomenally ebullient child star tops himself like none before, only to transmute audibly into a lost weirdo. In the 2000s, Christgau wrote, Jackson's obsession with fame, his grotesque life magnified by his grotesque wealth, are such an offense to rock aesthetes that the fact that he's a great musician is now often forgotten. Philanthropy and humanitarian work. Jackson is regarded as a prolific philanthropist and humanitarian. Jackson's early charitable work has been described by the Chronicle of Philanthropy as having paved the way for the current surge in celebrity philanthropy, and by the Los Angeles Times as having set the standard for generosity for other entertainers. By some estimates, he donated over $500 million, not accounting for inflation, to various charities over the course of his life. The total monetary value of Jackson's donations may be substantially higher since Jackson often gave anonymously and without fanfare. In addition to supporting several charities established by others, in 1992 Jackson established his Heal the World Foundation, to which he donated several $million in revenue from his Dangerous World Tour. Jackson's philanthropic activities went beyond just monetary donations. He also performed at benefit concerts, some of which he arranged. He gifted tickets for his regular concert performances to groups that assist underprivileged children. He visited sick children in hospitals around the world. He opened his own home for visits by underprivileged or sick children and provided special facilities and nurses if the children needed that level of care. Jackson donated valuable, personal, and professional paraphernalia for numerous charity auctions. He received various awards and accolades for his philanthropic work, including 2 bestowed by Presidents of the United States. The vast breadth of Jackson's philanthropic work has earned recognition in the Guinness World Records. Artistry. Influences. Jackson was influenced by musicians including James Brown, Little Richard, Jackie Wilson, Diana Ross, Fred Astaire, Sammy Davis Jr., Gene Kelly, and David Ruffin. Little Richard had a substantial influence on Jackson, but Brown was his greatest inspiration. He later said that as a small child, his mother would wake him whenever Brown appeared on television. Jackson described being mesmerized. Jackson's vocal technique was influenced by Diana Ross. His use of the ooh interjection from a young age was something Ross had used on many of her songs with the Supremes. She was a mother figure to him, and he often watched her rehearse. He said he had learned a lot from watching how she moved and sang, and that she had encouraged him to have confidence in himself. Choreographer David Winters, who met Jackson while choreographing the 1971 Diana Ross TV special Diana, said that Jackson watched the musical West Side Story almost every week, and it was his favorite film. He paid tribute to it in Beat It and the Bad video. Vocal style. Jackson sang from childhood, and over time his voice and vocal style changed. Between 1971 and 1975, his voice descended from boy soprano to high tenor. He was known for his vocal range. With the arrival of Off the Wall in the late 1970s, Jackson's abilities as a vocalist were well regarded. Rolling Stone compared his vocals to the breathless, dreamy stutter of Stevie Wonder, and wrote that Jackson's feathery timbered tenor is extraordinarily beautiful. It slides smoothly into a startling falsetto that's used very daringly. By the time of 1982's Thriller, Rolling Stone wrote that Jackson was singing in a fully adult voice that was tinged by sadness. The turn of the 1990s saw the release of the introspective album Dangerous. The New York Times noted that on some tracks, he gulps for breath, his voice quivers with anxiety or drops to a desperate whisper, hissing through clenched teeth, and he had a wretched tone. When singing of brotherhood or self-esteem, the musician would return to smooth vocals. Of Invincible, Rolling Stone wrote that, at 43, Jackson still performed exquisitely voiced rhythm tracks and vibrating vocal harmonies. Joseph Vogel notes Jackson's ability to use nonverbal sounds to express emotion. Neil McCormick wrote that Jackson's unorthodox singing style was original and utterly distinctive. Musicianship. Jackson had no formal music training and could not read or write music notation. He is credited for playing guitar, keyboard, and drums, but was not proficient in them. When composing, he recorded ideas by beatboxing and imitating instruments vocally. Describing the process, he said, "I'll just sing the bass part into the tape recorder. I'll take that bass lick and put the chords of the melody over the bass lick, and that's what inspires the melody." Engineer Robert Hoffman recalled that after Jackson came in with a song he had written overnight, Jackson sang every note of every chord to a guitar player. Hoffman also remembered Jackson singing string arrangements part by part into a cassette recorder. Dance. Jackson danced from a young age as part of the Jackson 5, and incorporated dance extensively in his performances and music videos. According to Sanjoy Roy of The Guardian, Jackson would flick and retract his limbs like switchblades, or snap out of a tornado spin into a perfectly poised toe stand. The moonwalk, taught to him by Jeffrey Daniel, was Jackson's signature dance move and one of the most famous of the 20th century. Jackson is credited for coining the name moonwalk. The move was previously known as the backslide. His other moves included the robot, crotch grab, and the anti-gravity lean of the Smooth Criminal video. Themes and genres. Jackson explored genres including pop, soul, rhythm and blues, funk, rock, disco, post-disco, dance pop and new jack swing. Steve Huey of AllMusic wrote that Thriller refined the strengths of Off the Wall. The dance and rock tracks were more aggressive, while the pop tunes and ballads were softer and more soulful. Its tracks included the ballads The Lady in My Life, Human Nature, and The Girl Is Mine, the funk pieces Billie Jean and Wanna Be Startin' Somethin', and the disco set Baby Be Mine and Pyt. With Off the Wall, Jackson's vocabulary of grunts, squeals, hiccups, moans, and asides vividly showed his maturation into an adult. Robert Christgau wrote in Christgau's Record Guide, Rock Albums of the 70s. The album's title track suggested to the critic a parallel between Jackson and Stevie Wonder's oddball music personas. Since childhood his main contact with the real world has been on stage and in bed. With Thriller, Christopher Connolly of Rolling Stone commented that Jackson developed his long association with the subliminal theme of paranoia and darker imagery. AllMusic's Stephen Thomas Erlewine noted this on the songs Billie Jean and Wanna Be Startin' Somethin'. In Billie Jean, Jackson depicts an obsessive fan who alleges he has fathered her child, and in Wanna Be Startin' Somethin' he argues against gossip and the media. Beat It decried gang violence in a homage to West Side Story, and was Jackson's first successful rock crossover piece, according to Huey. He observed that Thriller began Jackson's interest with the theme of the supernatural, a topic he revisited in subsequent years. In 1985, Jackson co-wrote the charity anthem We Are the World. Humanitarian themes later became a recurring theme in his lyrics and public persona. In Bad, Jackson's concept of the predatory lover is seen on the rock song Dirty Diana. The lead single I Just Can't Stop Loving You is a traditional love ballad, and Man in the Mirror is a ballad of confession and resolution. Smooth Criminal is an evocation of bloody assault, rape, and likely murder. AllMusic's Stephen Thomas Erlewine states that Dangerous presents Jackson as a paradoxical person. The first half of the record is dedicated to new jack swing, including songs like Jam and Remember the Time. It was the first Jackson album in which social ills became a primary theme, Why You Wanna Trip on Me, for example, protests world hunger, AIDS, homelessness, and drugs. Dangerous contains sexually charged songs such as In the Closet. The title track continues the theme of the predatory lover and compulsive desire. The second half includes introspective, pop gospel anthems such as Will You Be There, Heal the World and Keep the Faith. In the ballad Gone Too Soon, Jackson gives tribute to Ryan White and the plight of those with AIDS. History creates an atmosphere of paranoia. In the new jack swing funk rock tracks Scream and Tabloid Junkie, and the R&B ballad You Are Not Alone, Jackson retaliates against the injustice and isolation he feels, and directs his anger at the media. In the introspective ballad Stranger in Moscow, Jackson laments his fall from grace. Earth Song, Childhood, Little Susie and Smile are operatic pop songs. In D.S., Jackson attacks lawyer Thomas W. Snedden Jr., who had prosecuted him in both child sexual abuse cases. He describes Snedden as a white supremacist who wanted to get my ass, dead or alive. Invincible includes urban soul tracks such as Cry and The Lost Children, ballads such as Speechless, Break of Dawn, and Butterflies, and mixes hip-hop, pop, and R&B in 2000 Watts, Heartbreaker and Invincible. Music videos and choreography. Jackson released Thriller, a 14-minute music video directed by John Landis, in 1983. The zombie-themed video defined music videos and broke racial barriers on MTV, which had launched 2 years earlier. Before Thriller, Jackson struggled to receive coverage on MTV, allegedly because he was African American. Pressure from CBS Records persuaded MTV to start showing Billie Jean and later Beat It, which led to a lengthy partnership with Jackson, and helped other black music artists gain recognition. The popularity of his videos on MTV helped the relatively new channel's viewing figures, and MTV's focus shifted toward pop and R&B. His performance on Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, Forever changed the scope of live stage shows, making it acceptable for artists to lip-sync to music video on stage. The choreography in Thriller has been copied in Indian films and prisons in the Philippines. Thriller marked an increase in scale for music videos, and was named the most successful music video ever by the Guinness World Records. In Bad's 19-minute video directed by Martin Scorsese, Jackson used sexual imagery and choreography, and touched his chest, torso, and crotch. When asked by Winfrey in the 1993 interview about why he grabbed his crotch, he said it was spontaneously compelled by the music. Time magazine described the Bad video as infamous. It featured Wesley Snipes. Jackson's later videos often featured famous cameo roles. For the Smooth Criminal video, Jackson experimented with leaning forward at a 45-degree angle, beyond the performer's center of gravity. To accomplish this, Jackson and designers developed a special shoe to lock the performer's feet to the stage, allowing them to lean forward. They were granted U.S. Patent 5,255,452 for the device. The video for Leave Me Alone was not officially released in the U.S., but in 1989 was nominated for 3 Billboard Music Video Awards and won a Golden Lion Award for its special effects. It won a Grammy for Best Music Video, short form. He received the MTV Video Vanguard Award in 1988. In 2001 the award was renamed in his honor. The Black or White video simultaneously premiered on November 14, 1991, in 27 countries with an estimated audience of 500 million people, the largest audience ever for a music video at the time. Along with Jackson, it featured Macaulay Culkin, Peggy Lipton, and George Wendt. It helped introduce morphing to music videos. It was controversial for scenes in which Jackson rubs his crotch, vandalizes cars, and throws a garbage can through a storefront. He apologized and removed the final scene of the video. In the Closet featured Naomi Campbell in a courtship dance with Jackson. Remember the Time was set in ancient Egypt, and featured Eddie Murphy, Iman, and Magic Johnson. The video for Scream, directed by Mark Romanek and production designer Tom Foden, gained a record 11 MTV Video Music Award nominations, and won Best Dance Video, Best Choreography, and Best Art Direction. The song and its video are Jackson's response to being accused of child molestation in 1993. A year later, it won a Grammy for Best Music Video, short form. It has been reported as the most expensive music video ever made, at $7 million. Romanek has contradicted this. The Earth Song video was nominated for the 1997 Grammy for Best Music Video, short form. Michael Jackson's Ghosts, a short film written by Jackson and Stephen King and directed by Stan Winston, premiered at the 1996 Cannes Film Festival. At over 38 minutes long, it held the Guinness World Record for the longest music video until 2013, when it was eclipsed by the video for the Pharrell Williams song Happy. The 2001 video for You Rock My World lasts over 13 minutes, was directed by Paul Hunter, and features Chris Tucker and Marlon Brando. It won an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Music Video in 2002. In December 2009, the Library of Congress selected Thriller as the only music video to be preserved in the National Film Registry, as a work of enduring importance to American culture. Huey wrote that Jackson transformed the music video into an art form and a promotional tool through complex storylines, dance routines, special effects, and famous cameos, while breaking down racial barriers. Honors and awards. Jackson is one of the best-selling music artists in history, with sales estimated by various sources up to 400 million, 1 billion. He had 13 #1 singles in the U.S. in his solo career, more than any other male artist in the Hot 100 era. The RIAA regards him as the biggest-selling music artist of all time worldwide. He was invited and honored by a President of the United States at the White House 3 times. In 1984, he was honored with a Presidential Public Safety Commendation Award by Ronald Reagan for his humanitarian endeavors. In 1990, he was honored as the Artist of the Decade by George H. W. Bush. In 1992, he was honored as a Point of Light Ambassador by Bush for inviting disadvantaged children to his Neverland Ranch. He won hundreds of awards, more than any other popular music recording artist. His awards include 39 Guinness World Records, including the most successful entertainer of all time, 13 Grammy Awards, as well as the Grammy Legend Award and the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and a record 26 American Music Awards, including the Artist of the Century and Artist of the 1980s. He also received the World Music Awards Best-Selling Pop Male Artist of the Millennium and the Bambi Pop Artist of the Millennium Award. Jackson was inducted onto the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1980 as a member of the Jacksons, and in 1984 as a solo artist. He was inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Vocal Group Hall of Fame as a member of the Jackson 5 in 1997 and 1999, respectively, and again as a solo artist in 2001. In 2002, he was added to the Songwriters Hall of Fame. In 2010, he was the first recording artist to be inducted into the Dance Hall of Fame, and in 2014, he was posthumously inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame. In 2021, he was among the inaugural inductees into the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame. In 1988, Fisk University honored him with an honorary doctorate of humane letters. In 1992, he was invested as a titular king of Sanwai, a traditional kingdom located in the southeast of Ivory Coast. In July 2009, the Lunar Republic Society named a crater on the Moon after Jackson. In August, for what would have been Jackson's 51st birthday, Google dedicated their Google Doodle to him. In 2012, the extinct hermit crab Mesoparaphylicus Michael jacksoni was named in his honor. In 2014, the British Council of Cultural Relations deemed Jackson's life one of the 80 most important cultural moments of the 20th century. World Vitiligo Day has been celebrated on June 25, the anniversary of Jackson's death, to raise awareness of the autoimmune disorder that Jackson suffered from. Earnings. In 1989, Jackson's annual earnings from album sales, endorsements, and concerts were estimated at $125 million. Forbes placed Jackson's annual income at $35 million in 1996 and $20 million in 1997. Estimates of Jackson's net worth during his life range from negative $285 million to positive $350 million for 2002, 2003 and 2007. Forbes reported in August 2018 that Jackson's total career pre-tax earnings in life and death were $4.2 billion. Sales of his recordings through Sony's music unit earned him an estimated $300 million in royalties. He may have earned another $400 million from concerts, music publishing, endorsements, merchandising and music videos. In 2013, the executors of Jackson's estate filed a petition in the United States Tax Court as a result of a dispute with the Internal Revenue Service over U.S. federal estate taxes. The executors claim that it was worth about $7 million, the IRS that it was worth over $1.1 billion. In February 2014, the IRS reported that Jackson's estate owed $702 million, $505 million in taxes, and $197 million in penalties. A trial was held from February 6 to 24, 2017. In 2021, the tax court issued a ruling in favor of the estate, ruling that the estate's total combined value of the estate was $111.5 million and that the value of Jackson's name and likeness was $4 million. In 2016, Forbes estimated annual gross earnings by the Jackson estate at $825 million, the largest ever recorded for a celebrity, mostly due to the sale of the Sony/ATV catalog. In 2018, the figure was $400 million. It was the 8th year since his death that Jackson's annual earnings were reported to be over $100 million, thus bringing Jackson's post-mortem total to $2.4 billion. Forbes has consistently recognized Jackson as one of the top-earning dead celebrities since his death, and placed him at the top spot from 2013 to 2020. Discography: Got to Be There, Ben, Music and Me, Forever, Michael, Off the Wall, Thriller, Bad, Dangerous, History, Past, Present, and Future, Book I, Invincible. Filmography: The Wiz, Michael Jackson's Thriller, Captain EO, Moonwalker, Michael Jackson's Ghosts, Men in Black 2, Miss Castaway and the Island Girls, Michael Jackson's This Is It, Bad 25, Michael Jackson's Journey from Motown to Off the Wall, Tours, Bad, Dangerous World Tour, History World Tour, MJ and Friends. Notes. References.